Hello and welcome back to our sustainable journey. I am Matt Damon if you order from Wish. So today we're going to take a look at the fish tank and see how many worms are actually in there. It's been 3 weeks. We gave them 3.5 pounds of food and they've just now completed all of it, so I'm kind of curious because I thought there was a pound of worms in there. But now I'm not so sure because that seems like a really long time. I mean, some of it was like banana peels and stuff that's gonna take forever. But let's find out. Let's take a look. I'm gonna bring them up to the house. In the back here. So bring them up to the house. We'll take a look, and we'll see how many worms are actually in there. Stay tuned. So, in order to do this, I am going to be scooping the worms into these trays. So I have these plastic trays. I don't know, we use these for some of the fun sifting things that we do. I also use them when I am creating nurseries for cocoons. What I'll do is after we do a sift, I'll put the cocoons that come out into one of these with some castings and just kind of leave them alone for a couple of weeks, and they'll become baby worms. They'll hatch out and start living the dream. So sometimes we'll do that just for fun to see how well the hatch rates and things like that. So I'm going to take some worms from in here because I can hear them moving around. See, a lot of worms. And we'll put them in here. And the reason I'm doing this inside is because I have better lighting. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spread them out and sift the worms out into these. So these are what we use for small orders. This will hold, I believe this holds a 1/2 pound of worms. I think we got these at like Menards at some point. But when it's filled to the top, it's roughly a 1/2 pound. So I'm going to start pulling worms, putting them in here. I will probably put this on time lapse because, good Lord, that would be the most boring thing to watch ever. Okay, I'm going to try and explain what I'm doing and how I'm doing it so that you can see and understand what's going on in this little time lapse. So I use a modified version of the light sort. So basically you put a group of worms down, you put a light over them, you sift off the top layer, and then you leave the light on again, and then the worms go down, and then you scrape again, etc., and you just keep going and going. So I put the worms on the right, the sifted material on the left, and kind of work my way through. And if you look closely in this one, you can actually see what look like little white worms, and those are actually pot worms, I believe. And it's because this, if you look, you can see that this is a really wet bin. And so because of that, we've got the pot worms in there. So all you need to do is add some shredded cardboard or some sort of drier material, and that'll get rid of the pot worms because they're not going to like that environment. So I'm just slowly sifting through the material. See, you can see when you get to the end, there's big clumps of worms. And there's a few pepper seeds in the bottom right. You can see them. There's some in the middle there too. Those are going to take forever to sort out, for the worms to chomp down on. But eventually it will happen, and we'll get those broken out. All right, so another stack. And if you look closely on the bottom right of this grouping, you can actually see that we have mites as well. I couldn't see those when I was sifting. So, but there's some mites. There's not that many. That's next to nothing. Again, you could use some shredded cardboard to dry it out a little bit. You could also use the bread method where you put down a slice of bread. The mites get attracted to it. The worms, it takes a while for the worms to be attracted to it. And so the mites are covered. The bread is covered with the mites, and then you just discard it. You can do the same thing with like a watermelon slice. It takes the worms longer to get to it than the mites, and that will be one way to get rid of them. We don't really have too many mite problems here. So I usually let them be because they're good composters. They help break stuff down just as well as the worms and other things. And if you see that big branch in the back, that is actually one of the grapevines that is still getting broken down. That is going to take forever. And so that's why it's a good rule of thumb to say a pound of worms eats half a pound of food a day. Is just kind of a rule of thumb, because you have things like a grape vine or a banana peel that's going to take them a couple of weeks. They'll work at it the whole time, but it just takes them a little bit longer. They'll work on the easy to break down stuff first. So then we continue scraping away. There's a few worms that get left behind, but not too many. My fancy little skull. And I think this is the second to last little grouping of worms. That little coffee thing that's going to be there forever because it's got plastic. I may just discard that. It's been a good home for the worms, so that's why I've been leaving it. And then we have the last grouping of worms to sift out here, and then we'll be done. Just so you can see, slowly shifting my way through, getting them all. And I'm sure I missed a whole bunch of them. And you can see going through it one more time. And then the last little scoop, and that's it. So that is how you do a very, very, very slow sift. All right, there you have it. So one fish tank of worms has not even a half a cup, which is interesting. So let me do this. Let me show you what I do when we use these bins, because the worms go toward the bottom. So everything on top can be scraped off so you can get a more accurate measurement of what's in here. You might knock out some worms. That's okay. It's all their poop gets pushed to the top. And that way you can figure out exactly an accurate weight. All right. Push these guys back in. Come on. Let me pick up the couple that fell out. We're on top. All right. So put this thing set to that. Okay. And 1 grams. 5.5 ounces. So 1/3 of a pound, which is why when we put in 3.5 pounds of food, it took them almost 3 weeks to finish it all, because there were way less worms in there than I thought. So that's interesting. So yeah, 5.5 ounces. Okay, so now we will put them back. And we'll do more experiments with them. Big old worm ball. did find a few cocoons. So we'll put those back in there too. Sure there were more. All right. Now I'm going to pour the rest of this in, and then we'll give them some food because it looks like they got through everything. There was a little piece at the end of a banana that was left, but it was the end of a banana, and getting through the peels and stuff is kind of difficult for them. It takes them a while. But that was it. So 3 weeks, 3.5 pounds, a third of a pound of worms. It's pretty impressive. Look at how terrible that fence is. I need to fix that fence. But you'll notice they don't actually leave the fenced-in area. It's dipped down at a few spots. We need to rotate them off this pasture, but they're really smart and they're very well fence trained here, where they don't leave the area with the fencing. So it goes over to about there, and then down the lane here, up there, and you can see they've stayed completely within it. They leave about a foot or two swath around it. Good cows.